The information presented in this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not meant to be a substitute for clinical mental health treatment. If you or someone you know is experiencing a mental health crisis, please dial 988 or head to your nearest emergency room.
Welcome to another episode of the Black People Die by Suicide 2 podcast, where we discuss all things with an emphasis on suicide within the Black community. I am your co-host, T-Kea.
And I'm your co-host, Jordan.
It's another episode. I'm excited to be here, as always, with Georgeezy, my partner in crime. If you are new here, welcome. This is a podcast of two people with lived experience. I am a suicide attempt survivor. Jordan has experience with suicidal thoughts. And so if you're new here, we just want to encourage you to keep coming back. Go back and check out some of our older episodes. But it's really a space for Black people to discuss their experiences with suicide, to provide hope, and also to share some resources. So at the beginning of every episode, y'all know, if you OGs from like 8 or 9 months ago, we have our check-in. So I'm going to ask my good girl, Jordan, how you doing, girl?
I'm a little puzzled. I'm experiencing some things. T-Kea and I were talking earlier today that I normally do not experience when it comes to my mental health. So I think the best adjective I could use is probably a little confused. Confused. That's how I feel.
That's your word, confused.
That's my word, yeah.
Okay. I'm pretty sure it's somewhere on the feelings wheel, right?
Yeah, I think it is.
My word, I guess when you think about it, I'm just trying to figure out what word would I use. I think overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
There's like so much that I want to do, but I also have to remind myself to pace myself as well, because stress kills people, literally.
Yes.
So I got to constantly like pace myself. Like even the past 2 days, I've been working a lot, but like I made sure to like step away. Even like before we recorded the podcast, I went for like an hour walk because I was like, I have to step away. I think it's really easy when you're passionate about the work that you do. It's very easy for me to just get caught in working for hours and not stopping to make sure I eat or just go walk around the block. So I'm working on just kind of being intentional, but because of all that I'm doing, it does have me feeling a little overwhelmed.
Yeah.
So before we jump into today's topic and introduce our guest, we have to add, we've always been doing a check-in. Mm-hmm. Like ever since we started the podcast, we have been doing check-ins. But because we love Dr. Walker so much, and if you haven't listened to that episode with Dr. Walker, definitely go back out and check it because we love Dr. Walker.
Yes,
here.
The esteemed,
yes,
as I always say, Dr. Rita Walker.
Yes. So if you don't have her book, The Guide to
the Unapologetic.
The Unapologetic Guide to Black Mental Health, she has the book as well as the workbook. Mm-hmm. And so in that book, she talks about psychological fortitude. So, Jordan, what is psychological fortitude?
So psychological fortitude is your ability to sort of manage the stressors of life, because stress is a part of everyday life. It's something that's normal. You're going to experience something that's going to stress you out, probably on a day-to-day basis. And psychological fortitude is sort of a measure of how well you're doing so that when those things occur, you kind of have some resiliency and some bounce back. It doesn't completely derail you or, cause you to experience some adverse mental health things happening to you. You know what I mean?
So with that being said, we're going to start adding our PF for short, which is psychological fortitude, during our check-in. So we'll check in and we'll always shout Dr. Walker out because y'all need to get that book and the workbook. So what's your PF?
So she normally rates the PF from 0 to 10. With 0, of course, being not well, and then 10 being sort of operating at your highest self. So I'm gonna give myself a good 6.5. Not bad, but not great, but not bad.
You know what, Jordan? I'm gonna just go ahead and take that number 2. I think that's where I am too. I think I'm gonna go with the good 6.5. I'm not down in the dumps, but I'm not like, flying off the chandelier kind of happy type thing. So it's more like, okay, I'm kind of like in neutral, I guess. Like I'm maintaining. That's kind of like where I am. So,
okay.
Would you like to ask our guests to check in and introduce them?
Absolutely. So today we are joined by Mark Harrison. He is a clinical mental health counselor, a mental health advocate, an Army veteran, and a 2-time suicide survivor. Mark, we are so glad that you're joining us today. If you could tell us how you're doing and then give us a number 0 to 10 of how well you feel your psychological fortitude is today.
All right. Thank you for having me. The word for me is worthy. Yeah, and it's been a process for me to get there. So if I give you my psychological number, I would say I'm at an 8.5.
Oh, okay. Yes, we like that.
That's a good. That's good.
Maybe some of that will rub off on us, and it'll get us to like a good 7, a good 7.5. We'll meet you halfway.
But I tell people it's a process.
Yeah,
we know it's a process.
Yeah,
but probably for the last couple of months, I've been feeling great about myself, and it's probably based on my tribe. I'll use that word, not my circle anymore. It's my tribe. How we really check in and we show up for each other.
Nice. Yeah, we talk about having a support system on this show quite a bit, and that makes a huge difference in your mental health. So I'm glad that you have a tribe that is reciprocating and giving you some positive energy. Like, that's huge.
Yeah.
Take it from me, the isolator. All right. So for today's episode, we're going to talk about men's mental health and even the mental health of Black boys, because we're noticing that there's an increase in suicide rates for both groups, but particularly for Black youth. So Black boys are, they just see a spike in suicide attempts. And we want to highlight that because I feel like we don't really talk a lot about men's mental health in general. I would imagine it's kind of like Black women, you know what I mean? There's always that pressure to be strong, but with being male, it's kind of like that pressure of always being a man. Don't show your weaknesses. So it's about time we highlight the mental health of Black men, and let's talk about it because we have Mark here and he can share his experience. So Mark, if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself, we would absolutely love to hear it.
Yeah, well, first thing I want to talk about is when you're talking about the mental health of a young Black boy to a man, you got to remember men aren't given the language as a young child to express their feelings. So that's where it actually starts. I always tell people trauma starts when you were a kid and we take it into our adult world, especially if you're not handling it. And that's what I did. Just trying to survive in a culture that sees me as a threat, even as a Black boy, and not having that outlet of even speaking to my parents of what truly was going on with me. And as I got older, it got worse. Always happened to be the winner, the provider, the quote unquote, the Superman. But at what point does Superman take off his cape and sit back and relax? And a lot of us aren't given that opportunity. So we crash and we burn. And when we crash and burn, it goes to either suicide or to the penal system. And when I'm looking at these young boys now, especially with a job that I have where I'm looking at them, I'm like, wow, we need to engage and have these conversations because these boys are struggling. And I see myself in them. It's scary. Like, how do we reach them? How do we talk to them? What are our commonalities? And again, it starts in the house. I can remember a parent saying to me, and it's kind of disturbing, talked about how her son was a piece of crap. And he's 10 years old. So I said, and I got tired of listening to it. So I said, so Mama, if he's a piece of crap, what does that make you? You're raising this boy. But in his mind, all he hears is, I'm a piece of crap. I'm not worthy. So that's how he acts. He gets to school and he acts out. But he's really looking for that love and support. But again, he's not getting it at home. So he acts out in school. He acts out in his extracurricular activities. But all this young boy is, he wants somebody to say, hey, I love you and I'm there for you. And if not, it taxes on their mental health. And that's what's really been going on in this world. And you see it every day on the news. It's getting worse and worse every day.
That's heartbreaking.
I know, to think about that. Like, I have 5. Yeah, I'm sorry. I have a lot of siblings. I'm trying to figure out. I was trying to count them.
Do the math real quick.
Right. I do. I have 5 brothers, and I just think about like how what they've experienced as young boys, and like their father not necessarily always being the best example, and how a lot of that starts, like Mark said, in childhood. And if those things are not addressed or not corrected, it does kind of go over into adulthood. And that's how we have so many Black men who are showing up as Black men in stature, in height, in looking, but inside they're hurt boys. And it's so hurtful it's very sad to see that. And you can often tell by the way that they communicate. And even like Black men having low self-esteem, which I feel like is not something that's even really talked about often. So, Mark, I would like you to speak to just even going back to, so it's like a 2-part question. One, for you, what were some of the things that you noticed in your childhood that you went through, any circumstances, and how they carried over into adulthood? And when was the moment that you decided to address, the things that happened in your childhood?
Wow, that's actually a great question. For me, what a lot of Black boys go through was the abandonment of my father, and the effect that it has on you. Again, we're looking for that love, that support, just that role model, for the lack of a better word, of somebody being there. And I went through years of feeling unworthy. I went through years of feeling that I am never going to accomplish anything I wanted to do because I didn't have that quote unquote Black father in a house. And that was very impactful for me. And I took that with me everywhere where I went, losing friends, losing relationships, failures in jobs, just everything. Because I didn't have that man that I can sit down and have those conversations. And here it was, where I'm thinking I am okay, and I'm really not okay. And something happened I would say a couple of weeks ago, when I got a chance to partner with an organization, and they asked me to address the issues of a father. And it was the hardest thing I had to do, even being a licensed clinician. This is an issue that I did not address. How do I forgive my father? But more importantly, how do I tell him about my faults and frustrations and allow that chain to be broken? So when this piece was asked for me to do, the first night I cried. I'm like, how do I do this? How do I sit here and write on a piece of paper my most innermost thoughts about the failures that I had, or the failures that I thought my father was, the abandonment? How do I sit here, then also read this letter to a group of Black men where I'm on center stage? Took me 2 weeks to write the letter. I got up on that stage in a room filled with 102 Black men, read that letter, and that's where my freedom came. And once I realized, when the moderator asked everybody, the Black men in the room, how many can resonate with what Mark went through, 97% of the men in the room raised their hand. It was exhilarating for me. I didn't feel alone anymore. Then they said, so how do you want to end this? I took that letter and I ripped it up. And that's where my freedom came.
You know what? There's something really powerful about being able to just write down what you feel and be able to just dispose of it. And just let it go. I would imagine that did feel very freeing for you. I worked in juvenile detention years ago, and that was a very common theme for a lot of the young men who came into the facility. I work with both boys and girls, but working on the male units was particularly difficult because they would just tell you stories about what's going on with their life. And a lot of them were looking for a role model or a father figure on the streets. They really didn't know how to, I guess, have someone there to model being a man for them. So they would turn to sources that weren't the best for them. And a lot of them definitely had that trauma of not having their father around to really guide them. So they were just looking for, like you said, that male love wherever they could get it. That was a very, very common theme. I wonder, Mark, I would assume that mental health wasn't talked about for you growing up.
I don't even mean to laugh. You know how it goes in the black community.
Right.
What happens in this house stays in this house.
Yeah.
Not realizing what was happening in the house was killing me. And again, I didn't come from an abusive family, but mental health was something that we didn't talk about. Mm-hmm. And if we did talk about it, it's, don't go over there with your crazy cousin, not realizing the crazy cousin really had issues. So we didn't talk about it, or you get, go pray about it, take it to God. Then I had to realize God created therapists for a reason. So it wasn't talked about. And honestly, to be truthful, the 2024 is still not talked about in my family. I'm the one who decided I wanted to break the generational curse.
I would imagine by not, what's interesting. I was listening to, I think it was a podcast, or I saw something on social media, and they were talking about suicide, and then also like talking about, to Mark's point, like how we always hear what happens in this house stays in this house type of thing. And someone said they think the reason, part of the reason, or no, that's what it was. It was on the conference and they said part of the reason why they think the suicide rate is high for Black children, but we're talking about Black boys, is because the current generation can no longer hold previous generations on their back. Mm-hmm. So, Mark, if you can really speak about just Black boys or suicide and the correlation to Black boys, and even tying that into your experience with your suicide attempt.
Again, it's no difference. The young Black boys now, they're me, or I was them. I still see the same issue, where they don't know how to express their feelings, and what they're doing is they're either going to the street or committing crimes or taking their life. I see it every day when I'm working, just asking somebody what's going on. And my boy said to me, well, what do you mean what's going on? I said, I can see that you're dealing with something. And the first thing he said is, nobody ever asked me how I felt. And I was like, wow, here, this is all over again. And he's 13. And we sat down and we started talking. And he just cried. He said, no one ever asked me how I feel. And I said, how do you feel? He said, I feel alone. I feel like I can't go talk to nobody. Then after that, he's like, then I feel like I have to be the man of the house. Why are we even putting this on this 13-year-old boy? He's still a child. So to put that on him, he's struggling. And I'm like, we need to get help. But then you go to a school counselor, and I'll say this, the school counselors don't even look like us. So they don't even understand, or they're not even relatable. So he's, it's the drowning. And I'm like, how do we stop this? Do we start including mental health as part of the daily, regimen in schools? Counselors aren't doing the work. They're there. Parents definitely aren't doing the work. Do we need more programs? I don't even know what the answer is. But our young Black boys are struggling, and they want help. And that's why they're so aggressive, because they need that help. And they just want somebody to say, hey, it's okay. I see you. And for me, that's what I want. I want somebody to say, hey, I see you. I'm walking around like I'm not being seen. Then if I'm not being seen, I'm definitely not being heard. And what does that do? We go to the streets. So somebody's going to see me and hear me. And that's what happened. And for me, my suicide attempts didn't come at a young age. They came when I was, quote unquote, a full-fledged adult. because I had so much on me. And my suicide attempts wasn't a thing that I really wanted to kill myself, but I really wanted to kill the pain. And I really wanted somebody to say, hey, brother, I see you and I hear you.
I'm just over here taking it in. It makes me think about kind of what you were saying, like the adultification of Black children, but particularly Black boys. I feel like Black boys get no grace. You know what I mean? Like, even in news stories and things, you'll see people looking at Black kids like, oh, that's a grown man, versus if a white man does something, oh, he's just a boy. That's just a boy.
That's just little Johnny.
Exactly. Like, oh, he's just still a kid, and that man's like 40 years old. He's just a young kid. And it's like, dang, like, how do y'all consider this young Black boy to be this strong, scary man? And it's like, y'all don't give that grace to the grace that you allow for white men, or even white boys for sure, definitely doesn't get extended to Black boys. And I could see how that would be hurtful. That's a lot of burden on them. You know what I mean? Like, they're kids too. They should be afforded that grace. That's what I think.
No, I agree. Just because when we think about Black boys and how they're often told, like, boys don't cry, or men don't cry, or like, suck it up, which doesn't provide them with the space to talk about what it is that they're feeling. So the only emotion that they show is anger. But anger is a secondary emotion. So you're seeing the anger, but beneath that, feeling lonely or abandoned, like those emotions that's not being addressed. But anytime Black men are showing something that they're frustrated, and that's when people happen to actually pay attention, because they're angry.
Yep.
But it starts at a young age. It starts at home. And so that's why one of the things that I love about, like, a lot of millennial parents, and I have a relative in particular who has boys, and she is huge on, like, no, let them express themselves. It's okay to cry. Like, don't tell them suck it up or men don't cry, because those coping skills or lack thereof really go into adulthood. And then there are so many Black men walking around that are carrying hurt boys on the inside, and they don't even know how to express that.
Yep, I agree.
I would add to, or ask the question to Mark, of what do you feel like some of those barriers are with Black boys trying to, like, seek treatment, or because you already talked about how, I think you talked about how the boy that you was talking to, and he said, like, no one ever asked me how I was doing. What do you feel like some of the barriers are for young boys getting into mental health treatment? But then also, what can be the catalyst to get them there, to remove those barriers?
Well, for a boy to get into, a young man to get into treatment, it starts in the house. A 13-year-old boy can't call a therapist and say, I need therapist. Home first. I will be honest, the school is failing our Black boys. The counselor doesn't care. You know what I'm saying? What I've seen, the counselors are just there to just get a check or to label our young Black boys as ADHD, they're angry, or I don't want to be bothered. But the parents or even the grandparents has to truly be involved with what's going on with our children, because that's where it starts. Now, the other issue is, if the parent is at that mindset, we're not going to seek therapy, we're just going to work it out, that's a whole nother issue that we need to address. And that's why I'm talking to parents as well. Like, your son is reaching out. Pay attention to what's going on with your son. If he is acting out, he's acting out because he wants to be seen and heard. Not because he's acting out just because he's a teenage boy going through puberty. That's not always the case. We want to be heard and we want to be seen. But the parents or even the grandparents really have to, look at themselves and say, hey, I need to help my child. And that's where it starts. The school is not going to do it. One, they're not equipped to do it, and they really don't care.
It's so interesting you brought that up, because that kind of goes into, which is another podcast episode, but like the pipeline to prison.
Mm-hmm.
When Mark was talking, that's what came to my mind, because not only that, some of these counselors, they're not even equipped or trained. Don't have a level of cultural, I'm gonna say cultural awareness or cultural humility, because I can't say competent, because I don't think someone who is not black can never be fully competent on the black experience, but they can certainly be aware, so that they can be better equipped to help our black boys. So if it's not happening in the school and it's not happening at home, then I think there are many community resources that young boys can tap into. But depending on where they grow up, those resources may not even be there. So I guess, Mark, what is it that we can do, like in our everyday lives? What are practical tips that we can do as we're engaging with black boys, or even just black men in general, to make them feel supported? Like, as a black woman, for me and Jordan, like, what is it that we can do? I mentioned I have 5 brothers. I have a godson. So just trying to figure out what are the ways that I can even best support the men in my life.
You need to listen and look at behaviors. That's one. I want to go back to something when you said a pipeline to prisons. I had a chance to visit a school in Maryland 2 weeks ago. When I walked into school, there was a red line in the middle of the hallway. And the first thing I said is, what is this? Are we preparing our children for prison? Mm-hmm. And I got some political answer. And I was like, I'm looking at how these kids are walking down the hallway, and it's a predominantly African American school. I said, we are actually in a middle school preparing these young boys for prison. And I'm like, we have to do better. And the part that really frustrated me is the parents didn't even care. It was just like, I'm dropping my kid off to school as a babysitter. So again, we have to listen and look at behaviors. You know, I'm walking in and I'm watching this young men, and they're just all over the place. And I'm talking to them. I'm like, well, what's going on with you? You know, tell me how you're feeling. And it's like, wow, no one ever asked me how my day was. No one ever asked me what I wanted to do with my life. You know, no one ever asked me how I feel today. And I'm like, wow, it hasn't changed since I was a kid. And that's the part that is bothering me. I don't know how we change it. Yeah, we can get those community resources out there. But again, these are kids. Kids are not going to call a community resource. The parents and the adults really have to step up and truly, truly pay attention. The kids aren't thinking about, oh, I need to call a resource because I need help. Their mindset isn't there. It's the adult. And we have to truly, truly educate the adults. And it's a hard situation because remember, I'm looking at these adults who are raising these boys by themselves. They're dealing with their own trauma. And if we're not even addressing that, it becomes a generational curse over and over and over and over again. So that's a question that we ask all the time. How do we change it? You know, I always tell people, I can't be in every school in Maryland, you know, checking on our boys. You know, what I will do is I will call my boys and say, hey, I need you to show up so they can actually see you. And they actually do. But that's on my spectrum. But we need more men. And I'm not even going to say men. We need more adults, men and women, to show up for our young boys. Because, it's, again, a woman raising a young boy by herself is hard because she's in survival mode. And she wants that young boy to be a man. He's not a man. He's a child. You know, so he's not even able to address things that are going on as a 13 or 14-year-old boy. He's in survival mode trying to make sure that the bills are paid. You know, so that's why I call my friends, hey, I need you to show up so they can see that black men are there. And we have great organizations, you know, like 100 Men, we have the fraternities, but we need more. You know, we definitely need more.
It's making me think back. I've worked in Baltimore City Schools, an after-school program, and I've worked in Prince George's County Public Schools. I'm a product of Prince George's County Public Schools. And I think it seems to me like there needs to be an atmosphere shift, because as a former student, and I would imagine it's probably amplified for my Black male counterparts, there's this sort of atmosphere of, y'all don't matter. It's not worth exerting the energy to pour into you anyway. You know what I mean? Like, why even bother trying to, I guess, foster these healthy things into you? You're not going to be ish anyway. That's kind of the attitude that I felt growing up in the school system, and then also coming back to work in the school system. And people think that kids aren't hip to that. They feel that. Like, they know when you're walking in there and you don't care about them. They get the sense that they're sort of like second-rate citizens in the school, and nobody's really going to put in effort to make things nice for them, to make sure that they have programs, or make sure that they have, enough field trips, enrichment. It's kind of like you said, literally like being in a jail. Like, they go to school to just get punished. School feels very punitive in a way. I don't know how to describe it. I guess, if you grew up in a Black school system, you probably understand what I'm saying. But there's this sense of like, the kids don't matter. Y'all are just going to mess up in life anyway, so why bother? And the kids take that in. Like, it's felt. Mm-hmm. It's like tangible. You know what I mean? And so it makes going to school, it makes it a somber experience when it shouldn't be that. And definitely fosters a sense of hopelessness. And I could see why a kid wouldn't necessarily, or they'll be perceived as not necessarily applying themselves. It's because you don't care. And it's obvious that you don't care. So I feel like there needs to be an atmosphere shift. Like, how do we shift from come here, sit down, shut up, do your work, to like, I don't know, creating an atmosphere that feels loving and safe and protected? Because that's not the way a lot of Black school districts feel now. It's just my opinion.
No, it's interesting you brought that up, because when you were talking, it made me think about how what people tend to pay attention to as it relates to Black boys, they just pay attention to the behavior.
Yes.
Not the root in terms of what's going on, because that behavior is a response to something. But they're not addressing that. They just want to address the behavior. And I feel like that's where the issue lies. Mark, I think you were going to say something. I'm sorry. I think I cut you off.
I was. I'm in the schools in this big position, and that means nothing. But when I went into a school and I hear a teacher say to a young Black boy in the hallway, "You're ugly,"
what?
I had to shift. There's a lot, and But what I did was I went and grabbed that group. Well, I went over to the young boy and I said, "Look, let's have a conversation." I said, "You heard what the teacher said. How does that make you feel?" And he said, "Well, I hear it at home." And I said, "You're not ugly," And I had to say, "You are a king," And I had to give those positive reinforcements. And in my mind, I'm like, wow, what can we do to shift the narrative? That I just got on the phone and I just started to call my boys. I need you to come to the school. I need you to come to the school. I don't ever want these young Black boys to feel unworthy. And I can't be calling everybody because I don't have enough Black boys to, Black men to do this. But for a teacher to call this young Black boy ugly, and in his mind, like, I hear this all the time, and I'm sitting like, no, you're not. You're a king, and we got to walk like we are a king, and start asking these type of questions. And his response is, well, nobody cares about me anyway. Then it takes me to how I felt as a boy. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, how do we shift this? And I don't know the answer, and I don't even know if there is an answer. I mean, you have some great people in the schools, but it's that percentage that are just bad. It truly, truly messes it up. Talking to a young boy, and I'm like, go into an in-school suspension, and they are filled with young black boys, you know? And I'm having these conversations like, why are you in here? Oh, I got kicked off the bus, or I pushed somebody. And I'm sitting there looking at this teacher like, why aren't you engaging with these young men? I said, I'm in here for 10 minutes, and we're having a conversation about what it is that you want to do with your life. Where do you see yourself at in the next 5 or 10 years? We're having that conversation. If you do this, this is what's going to happen. And they are truly engaged. And I'm like, wow, this is what I needed when I was in school. So what I'm doing now is I'm giving it back to them. But again, we need more people who can actually do this. It doesn't even have to be a black man anymore. You know, black women have a lot of power. You know what I'm saying? But we need to find some way we can bring this power together to help out our young black population, because if not, we are in trouble.
I have so many thoughts. It's also making me think about how, like, a lot of black kids, I feel like our experiences end up being very pigeonholed, almost like black kids aren't allowed to explore and figure out what they want. You know what I mean? It's almost like we make the decision for them. Oh, they're going to be a basketball player, or like almost we get pushed into certain things that are quote unquote acceptable or realistic, whereas they're not necessarily, there's no priority to expose them to lots of different possibilities and options. And I only say that because I was like you, again, I worked in black school districts, and I would talk to the young men and the young women about what they wanted to do with their future. And I kid you not, like, everybody would say they either wanted to play basketball, and the girls would say they want to do hair. And I'm just like, you know, there's a lot out here in the world. Are we not, does it feel hopeless that we're not actually exposing them to all the things that they could possibly do? You know what I mean? It's almost like kind of like how there were some school districts that have been called out in the past because like they would have the career options up for what kids could go into, and it would be stuff like Pizza Hut, Domino's, janitor. Like, there's not enough, I don't know what I'm trying to say. There isn't enough I guess exposure.
Yeah, exposure. And I'll put the disclaimer, we're not saying that there's anything
no
with being a janitor or working
I'm not saying that.
We're not saying that, but we're just saying that it's important that kids know like what the possibilities are and that they can be limitless.
Yes.
So I get what you're saying with that. As a child who was involved in almost every extracurricular activity you can think of, I played the clarinet, I did drill team, I did choir, I did praise dance, I did dance school, I did theater camp, like literally so many. I was involved in a lot. And I say that to say, because of all of a lot of it was in the arts, because of that, it opened my mind up to so much, just saying like, wow, I could do this, I could do that. But if you're not exposed to it, you don't even know what the options are. You don't know what the possibilities are. So that's why exposure is super important.
And I think that you use the word that I was trying to get to. Like, I feel black kids, and particularly black boys, have a very, I guess, a limited experience. Again, that kind of goes back to, there's no point in trying to push you to do this because you're not going to be ish anyway. So just push them to do this kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like,
right, which is like sports. Like, oh, they can play basketball, they can play football, but how about exposing them to STEM or, you know, other things that might, other things, just other opportunities. Black boys can do a lot more than play sports.
Yes, I mean, it's like that creativity kind of fosters a sense of wonder or a sense of hope. Like, these are all the things that I could be. And it's just like, I don't know, again, you would have to grow up in a school system like Prince George's. There's just, we're going to pigeonhole you into these things because you're a black boy, and that automatically means you're not going to amount to anything anyway. So just get out of my face and go do that. Go over there and do that kind of thing. Like, And kids, again, the kids aren't stupid. The kids feel that. Like, we go into the school and we feel like school is just this hopeless place. Like, we go here because we don't want our parents to get in trouble for us being truant kind of thing. Like, instead of being a place where there's hope for the future and there's creativity and there's like, oh, I can imagine what my future is going to look like. It's just like, okay, you're either going to be a basketball player or I'm going to jail kind of thing. And it shouldn't be like that. It's like there's no hope in a lot of African American schools, I guess is my long roundabout way of trying to say that. Again, Mark, I'm sure you understand because you work in the school.
Well, I work for the, just leave it like, but what I'm saying, because I do hear basketball, football, I do hear that, right? But what I do is, why can't you be a sports agent? Why can't you be a head coach?
Yeah, see,
and they're looking at me like that. What?
Mm-hmm.
They're looking like, well, what's that? So I make sure that my team engages, especially with the boys, in regards to that. Let's look at it because everybody's not going to play basketball or football, but if you're lucky, let's be the agent who recruits somebody to play basketball or football. And they're like, I don't know what that is. So then I also look at, what are our counselors saying? Our counselors are not even providing our boys with the tools and resources to do this. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, wow. And I'm like, if I went through the same thing, and that was a long time ago, you know what I'm saying? And every time I walk into school, I say, nothing has changed since I was in school as a kid. Then I was also a teacher in Baltimore, and I still see the same issues. But now I'm looking at the whole mental health piece of it. Because my day, nobody was talking mental health. When I was a teacher, nobody was talking mental health. And we're talking it now, and I'm asking the counselors, is there a mental health component in here? And most of the counselors were like, no, not really. I'm like, so then how are you helping our children? And they just give me a blank stare. I'm like, no. So these kids are coming to school with so much trauma. Mm-hmm. School for some of these kids is a safe haven. And I'm like, why aren't we addressing the trauma that our kids are facing? And nobody can give me this answer. So when I'm in there, I'm taking my time and I'm having these conversations. And when I go to another school and I can remember their name, it's like a light comes on. I said, because I see you and I hear you. I said, and in my mind, I never want you to feel like you are not worthy and you do not matter, because you do, but it's hard. It is definitely hard. So I'm always reaching out to these organizations and say, hey, we need to do more. I'm tired of turning on the news and seeing a 13 or 15-year-old boy shooting somebody or they're dead. I said, I didn't come from that environment. We need to find a way to address these mental health issues in the house. And 9 times out of 10, it starts with the parent. It does. I mean, kids don't have the bandwidth to say, hey, I need to go to counseling. They don't even know what counseling is. So I don't know how to change, but I'm doing what I can do to help all our young boys. When I see a true need, I call some of my friends, some organizations, say, hey, I need all brothers, all call to come on in here because we need help. And I will honestly say, when I have called my black male friends, they have shown up.
That is such a beautiful thing, isn't it?
Yes.
It just makes me so happy to see black men show up like that. But
y'all, I'm going to interrupt. You know why they're showing up?
Why are they showing
up? Because
they
too have gone through trauma. And they don't want that cycle to keep repeating. So that's why they show up. They know how it felt when they were a kid, or even as a grown man. And one of my boys said, why do I want a young boy to go through what I went through? I know how we can fix this. So yeah, I'm going to show up every time you need me. And he does.
I am curious, going back to when you read that letter for that audience of men, what kind of feedback did you get afterwards? I'm very curious to know.
That's a great question. First, when the moderator said, how many people can resonate with Mark? Again, 95, 97% of the room stood up. I got a standing ovation and applause. But when I was able to go back to my seat to sit down, everybody came over and hugged me. Wow. This is phenomenal. I didn't feel alone. Ironically enough, I was at an event last week. 3 guys who were at this event saw me, and they said, "Yo, bruh, I remember you from that event. Your story, my story," at them, because I didn't remember who the men were in the room. I was actually in a zone that I had never been in before, and it was like, "Yo, your story was our story, and we applaud you. Can we do this again?" Because so many black men need to hear this. And we had men from 18 probably up to like 65 years of age. But when somebody's grandfather came over and hugged me and said, "Thank you," he said, "I've been holding on to this for years and years and years. And I see why my son went into the penal system, because it was that generational curse." I was like, wow, this is truly, truly amazing. It was a true safe space for men to truly be vulnerable.
And I think we need more spaces to do that. We need more spaces to do that.
Yep.
Black men need more spaces to do that. Mark, we want to give you an opportunity to just kind of share if there's anything that you have maybe coming up, or if people want to connect with you on social media. Just, we want to give you opportunity to plug in all things Mark.
Don't say that. I might get in trouble. But, on social media, it's Instagram. It's KAPPAMAN 1911. I have something very big happening in June from this event that I spoke at last week. NAMI, and I know both of you ladies are familiar with NAMI, reached out to me. I will be one of their feature speakers at NAMICOM in Denver, Colorado, June 4th to June the 6th. I just got the confirmation 2 days ago. There is something, I want to share this with you. He won't get upset. I went to an event again. And one thing I want to do different with the mental health piece as it relates to men, I want to add the art to it. So I have a very good friend who is a black artist. He is going to do a sketch for me that starts from a young black boy from trauma and go all the way up to a man who's been healed. So that'll be coming out soon as well. It's actually going to be presented at the NAMICon as well. So that's kind of what I'm doing. Fox News has asked me to come back and speak. They realized when we did that piece a couple of weeks ago, the reporter said they need a whole segment on it versus 3 to 4 minutes. So they've actually just reached out a couple of days ago.
Oh, that is amazing. That is awesome, I'm so happy.
Yes.
Like, that is amazing. Congratulations. Like, that, I'm just like, wow. Like, black men need that. Black men need to see you. And this is so amazing. I mean, we have time, who knows? Jordan and I might pop up at NAMICON, okay? I went last year, and I can't remember where it was last year. Don't give me the lying. I can't even remember. Oh, it was in Minnesota.
Well, it's in Denver, Colorado. Oh,
okay.
Year, but I'm talking about the myth of therapy as it pertains to young black boys to men. But I named the segment Someone's Child. Yeah, and I was just shocked that I was asked to speak, and I'm gonna take it and run with it. What I want to do in the future, I really want to do a black college tour as it pertains to mental health in the black community.
Mark, we gonna talk to you offline, because we got something in the works. As I just so happen to have you on my shirt. We're gonna talk offline. We'll reach out to you. We can't say too much right now, but
we need you.
I got you.
we got some stuff cooking up over here to what you just said. So we got you. We gonna partner. But
my school, MSU, has asked me to actually lead an initiative.
Okay.
But I want to do a whole black college tour. And you ladies know this. Again, dealing with young black boys, going into the schools, and I'm looking around these schools, and I'm seeing all these banners in Maryland. And I'm like, we got 4 HBCUs, and I don't even see one HBU up hanging. That's a problem. So I'm talking to these young boys. Did you think about Howard? Did you think about Morgan? Did you think about Bowie? Did you think about Compton? And half of them are like, I've never even heard of them schools. And I'm like, pause. We got a problem. So, and yeah, that's what I want to do. And I'm going to do it. I know it's a lot of work, but I'm ready for it.
Yeah, we'll reach out to you. You'll be happy to hear what we send you. So we want to thank you so much for just coming on and sharing your experience and talking about the impact of the weight of the world as it relates to Black boys and how it impacts them. Thank you so much for sharing your experience and just for being a light for Black men. We need that, and just congratulations, and we just wish you continued success.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
So for every episode, we like to shine a spotlight, which we highlight someone who has passed away from suicide as a way of paying our respects and remembering that person's legacy. And for today, we are going to do Charles Johnson. He is a former NFL wide receiver. He died by suicide on July 17th of 2022 at the age of 50. He's played for multiple teams, Steelers, Eagles, Patriots, and Bills before he finally retired. And he was the athletic director at Heritage High School in Wake Forest, North Carolina at the time of his passing. I actually remember this story. I think it caught a lot of people by surprise because, again, it's almost like Black men don't do that. Certainly not older Black men kind of thing, So to Charles, we thank you for your contributions to sports, for going out there and working with the kids, and just, we honor your memory. So for today's resource, we're going to do, this is really cool to me, y'all. I'm not going to lie, because I'm going to get into why I think it's cool. But it's the Confess Project of America. They're a national organization that fosters mental health advocacy in the Black barber and beauty industry by building awareness, breaking stigma, and increasing access to care within the communities they serve. So you can check them out on Instagram at The Confess Project of America and on their website at theconfessprojectofamerica.org. And I thought this was cool because y'all know, like, when you're getting your hair done, I don't know what it is about, like, being in that shampoo bowl, but you just start talking like it's therapeutic. And Black men have the same experience in the barbershop.
Right.
Like, you go there, you be talking to your stylist or your barber, and you really, like, I'm sure they hear a lot. They might as well be counselors at this point.
Seriously, when I've told Carmen a lot.
Yes,
in her chair.
Yes, y'all. My hairstylist, shout out to her, Carmen. I've been with her since 2013. Definitely prior to getting locks in my hair. And I would go, and we would just talk, and I would feel so much better. She just has a very like therapeutic spirit about her. I feel like she gives such good advice. Like she should be a counselor. And a lot of beauticians and barbers are like that. And so I thought that the Confess Project was a brilliant idea for almost like barbershop therapy, barbershop kind of ministry kind of thing.
It's like a healing circle. That's kind of what comes to mind. Because I'm like, well, I guess they could give advice, but I guess when it comes to clinicians, they're developing a treatment plan. So it's not really advice, but it's kind of, I think healing happens in all different forms. It doesn't just happen in the actual clinical therapeutic space, Right. It happens in our support groups. It happens at conferences. It happens all over. Mm-hmm. So I love that's super dope. Shout out to the Confess Project. Like that's amazing.
I know they're trying to like train barbers and beauticians to kind of be aware that something may be going on with someone and to sort of ask the questions that would prompt someone to really assess how they're feeling kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So they're trying to basically deploy more people to be almost like mental health first aiders in a sense,
That's why
but
she
not
hit them
mental
up,
health
right?
first aiders.
I was like, maybe I need to hit up the Confess Project and tell them, you know, I can do a mental health first aid training for barber, beauticians and barbers. But yeah, that's amazing. So we'll get over, I guess that's me, the community Changemaker segment. So it's for, I believe, I think it's Kofi. I hope I'm saying your name right, brother. Kofi Kizzle Forson. He is the founder, and I see him on social media all the time. Like, his clips often go viral, and he is super dope. We should probably get him on the podcast. But he's the founder of ExpressYourselfBlackMan, and it is a podcast and healing community for Black men. If you are a Black man and listening to this, I know we have more women listening to our podcast, but I would encourage you, or if you're a woman listening to this, send them the Express Yourself Black Man podcast. Send them the Instagram, because it is beautiful what he is building. So check them out on Instagram. Express Yourself Black Man on Instagram, and then also Kizzle, his is Express Yourself Kizzle, and those are both on Instagram. And we'll also be sure to leave that in the show notes, like we always do, so that you can get the resource.
He has beautiful inspirational messages on his. I'm like, I'm not a man, but I want to.
Right.
Let me get some of these messages myself. Like, it's a beautifully done page. Definitely shout out to him, because I don't know. It's just, I'm so glad that there are people out there like Mark, like Kofi, that are trying to encourage Black men to be more vulnerable and provide safe spaces for them to actually talk about how they're feeling. Because again, it's a lot. It's very heavy. Like, be a man, boys don't cry, suck it up, like, stop being a little girl, or whatever people, you know, just all kind of things that people will say. And yeah, it's like giving Black men a space to be human. You know what I mean? We're not robots. So shout out to the Instagram page. If you need some feel good, male or female, man or woman, go and get you some feel good, because I love his Instagram page. It's very nice. So
that's Express Yourself Black Man on Instagram. So y'all do that. So
yes. Oh boy.
Going into our segment.
Are y'all ready for the foolishness?
Right.
Here we go.
The darnest things people have said about mental health.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Oh. Yeah. So this is again, a new segment for us, but we thought it would be nice to kind of like lighten up the mood a little bit. So if you're a person who has experienced suicidal thoughts, or had a suicide attempt, or just struggle with your mental health, there's probably some things that you have heard along the way that has not been helpful, because people do say the darndest things, and today is a good one. Pray harder, or have you gone to church, or you just need more faith. And I'm like, wait a minute now. So now you're attacking my faith, because how do you know I haven't been on my knees every night praying for God to take this depression away? Like, it's very insulting.
Yeah.
I just
people mean well, you know.
Do.
But yeah, I was told just speak in tongues for 20 minutes a day.
And I'm just like, wait, don't you have to, isn't that a gift?
Right, I don't have that. I still don't have it. So
I mean, people mean well. Don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not saying anything bad about the folks who say that or use that as, you know, advice to others when they're trying to help them. Maybe they don't know what to say, and that's understandable. But there's definitely, I know for me, it was kind of used as a tone of dismissiveness. Like, girl, if you just go to church, the depression will just kind of like go away. Or I needed somebody to pray away like the demon of depression, or implying that I've done something sinful to make this kind of happen to me. But like T-Kea has said in multiple previous episodes, your brain is sick, right? Like, just like anything else in your body gets sick. T-Kea had me cracking up earlier, and she said, like, somebody breaks their leg, you're not gonna tell them, like,
get up and start walking.
Okay. Or you just pray the pain away and get up, start walking, you'll be okay. Like, you don't hear that type of thing. And mental health issues are no different from physical health issues. Your brain is sick, so.
Right. If I had an asthma attack, nobody would be like,
girl, start breathing. Pray it away. No, you would be calling 911 for homegirl and like making sure she's got her inhaler or whatever she needs. You wouldn't. Yeah, it's just people mean well. People do mean well, and maybe they don't know what to say, so they say the darndest things. But we just trying to lighten up the mood, and yeah, man.
Yeah.
You'll hear some things out here in these mental health streets.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like you said, people do mean well, but we just want to encourage people. If you are someone that has said something along those lines, I'm going to give you most people the benefit of the doubt and you were trying to help. But I would encourage you to, you can even go to Google, best ways to support someone, asking someone, how can I best support you? Ask them, what is it that they need? Do they need groceries? Do they need help cleaning? Do they need just a space to vent and just to get it out? Do they need help looking for a therapist? Like, what is it that you can do? And the best thing that you can do and ask someone is, how can I best support you? And let them tell you versus you assuming. And if they don't know, then maybe start maybe working together to start coming up with some suggestions versus just assuming.
Yep.
So going on along to self-care.
Our favorite segment. Woo. Yeah. So in the beginning of the episode, I mentioned feeling like my emotion was a little bit of confusion. And I was talking to T-Kea earlier. What I'm going to do for my self-care, I think, is a little bit of journaling. Something is going on with my mental health, but it's not the way that it's presented itself for the this is 2024, for the 12 years that I've experienced a mental health issue. So normally the depressive symptoms is what hits me first. And that's in combination with just general anxiety. And if it gets severe enough, I'll start to experience like the post-traumatic stress disorder symptoms. So one of the key hallmarks that I always would go by to indicate to me whether or not I needed to be hospitalized was obviously the feelings of the suicidal thoughts. Most of the time my suicidal thoughts were passive, but I definitely got to the point where I knew how I was going to end my life, and I had the means to do it. I just didn't go through with it for whatever reason. But once I got to that point, combined with me having like these really weird, vivid dreams. If you have PTSD, you probably know what I'm talking about. It is a very surreal experience. When the dreams kicked in, that's when I would know I needed to go to the hospital. But for me now, y'all, something has triggered my post-traumatic stress disorder symptoms, and I don't know what it is, because I don't feel like the depression. I don't feel suicidal thoughts at all. I don't feel hopeless. I don't feel like
you just feel off, like you know something's there, but off. You can't like put your name. I mean, you can't name it.
Yes, because it's not presenting the way it normally would, and I'm having all these wonky dreams, and I'm like, I wake up like, no lie, every time I go to sleep, I probably have like 5 dreams in a night, because every time I go back to sleep, I have another crazy dream, and I wake up and go back to sleep and have another crazy dream, and I'm sitting here like, oh shoot, because last episode I told you all that I thought I was experiencing a little bit of depression.
You
and
did.
Something felt weird, but I don't think that's what this is. I've noticed for like the past 2 weeks or so, I've been having these pretty consistent vivid dreams that are giving me PTSD vibes, and I don't like it. But it's just in the absence of all the other things that I normally feel. PTSD is always on the back end prior to me needing hospitalization. But I don't need hospitalization because I don't feel depressed or suicidal. So this is very different for me. I'm hoping that, I was thinking about this on the way in to the studio. What if I do some journaling? Because maybe that will help me kind of sort out where this is coming from, if I just get the thoughts out of my head and onto paper, I feel like that'll be a good tool for me to kind of, I don't know, get things out and explore kind of what happened. I don't know. This is very odd for me. But that's what I'm going to do for my self-care. And I'm happy to report that I did go to the doctor, y'all. I went to the rheumatologist. I need a hand clap for that, Leon. Definitely, because, ooh, yes, there we go. 'Cause it went horribly. I had a whole meltdown. My rheumatologist was looking at me like, girl, do you need to be committed to the hospital right now? Because I told them that I was struggling with my mental health, and I just been off with my medication, and it's just been a lot going on. And I don't know, I just couldn't place it. I got in front of that man, y'all, and I just started crying. I was so embarrassed. I was like, oh my God. Normally my appointments are every 3 months. My man was so concerned about me. He told me to come back in 3 weeks. He probably like, oh, I got to put eyes on her because she's on one right now. So yeah, I did do that. So my self-care of going to see the doctor, check. I got my medication, check. So hopefully I'll be feeling physically better in the coming weeks. But I don't know what's going on with my mental health, y'all. But for all intents and purposes, do not worry about me. Do not fear. Like, I feel fine. I'm not suicidal. Trust me, I know how to get myself to that hospital, because they only had to involuntarily commit me one time. And the other 3 times, I went of my own volition, drove myself there. I was not playing. But I do feel, my mood feels, it feels normal. I just have PTSD symptoms from something. I don't know why.
I'm so happy for you, friend. I was smiling as you were talking. I was like, my friend is doing her self-care. She got her meds. She saw her doctor. You about to get this journaling popping. So I'm happy for you, and I am very proud of you.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm a little confused, y'all. And a little all over the place, but that's okay. That's what self-care is for. I'm hoping, I can tell, like, I have some, I'm just, like, spiritually not as aligned as I would like to be. So I'm hoping to do some, I don't know, meditation or prayer or something, because I just feel even a little spiritually off. But I'm confident that with some self-care practices, I can get to feeling like myself again. And then also kind of figure out what's going on with me with my PTSD. I'm still seeing my doctor. My therapist. I saw my nurse practitioner recently. She's great, by the way. I'm gonna have to talk about her on another episode, but I'm seeing her. I'm still not taking any medication right now, but we're trying to figure out whether or not I'm to the point where we need to do that. My NP, she's very, very good. She wants to make sure you're taking medication if medication is absolutely necessary. Like, she's one of those people that medication is a last resort.
She's not going to just drug you up.
She's going to try to keep you off for as reasonable a time as she can. And if you talk to her about your symptoms and she feels concerned for you, then she'll come up with a plan for you together to put you on medication. And that's if you want to be on medication. She does not pressure anybody to take anything. She's very, very understanding. So we're kind of talking about that together. But I'm hoping that, yeah, with some implementation of self-care, I can kind of get to the bottom of it. But anyway, enough about me. What you doing for self-care, T-Kea?
Jordan, this was your therapy session, huh?
It was. Kind of like how the last one was your therapy session. Yes. After we got off the last episode, y'all, T-Kea was like, I use this for my therapy session. I said, that's okay. That's how I feel right now. So I appreciate all of y'all for listening and watching.
For self-care, for me, I have started going back to my actual, like, gym. You know, black people be like bar, or, you know, black people, we gotta say something twice to put the emphasis on what it is, right? So typically, you know, for the past few months, I've just been going to my apartment gym, and I'll just kind of work out on my own. But it's just, it don't hit the same without my girls, you know? So I had went back, and it felt good to be back. Like when I walked through that door at 5 a.m., all the heads turned because I have been gone since the end of November. Everyone just was like, it's so good to see you. Everyone was like giving me hugs. It just felt so good because I felt like it was time for me to go back, because it was starting to become harder to stay consistent on my own.
Right.
And I know it's different strokes for different folks. Some people are fine working out on their own. And while, yes, I can do it, I find that with having a community, it makes it a little bit easier. I'm not saying it's easy, but it does make it easier for me to go. So that was great. And then Laura came over and we went for a walk. Yeah, I love Laura, y'all. So Jordan laughing. I got my little nickname for Laura. She's called my favorite white girl. My favorite white girl. So if you listening, hey girl. So I did. She and I went on a walk, and she just mainly listened. I just talked. So that was great for self-care. And it just feels good to be like back in working out with my girls. It does, because there's just call and response when we're working out. You know, it's very family oriented, or, you know, so it just feels good to be back. So that's for my self-care. And then also, I am a little bit more than halfway through my book for Michelle Obama's book, The Light We Carry. And I feel like it's so needed for the season that I'm in, because, you know, I'm really trying to make sure my little light shines, okay? This little light of mine, I'm just trying to make sure it's shining, okay? So that has been great. And then also, I've been working on getting back on my sleep routine, because when I am not, I'm just no good. Like I'm gonna put something up on my Instagram, because I like kind of recorded my bed team ritual. And I think we need an episode on sleep hygiene and on having a sleep routine, because just laying in your bed on your phone until you fall asleep, that is terrible sleep hygiene. It is just it's not good for your mental health. So I feel like I've been doing a combination of things as it relates to self-care. I just really been working on making sure that I am being mindful and tending to myself, and making sure that I'm not working myself to death, because y'all listen to the show so much. Y'all know I work a lot. Jordan, y'all know I work a lot. So that's what I've been doing for self-care. I've been working on being a little bit more intentional, because I was noticing that I was working a lot more, and my self-care was starting to regress. I think that's the word. So I was like, it was more work, less self-care. And I was like, we got to get that back going the other way. And my therapist, Dr. T, she is really good about making sure that your life is not revolving around your work. She is like against that. And ever since I've been seeing her, she's like, your work is supposed to fit into your life. If it's not, then it's not good to have your life revolving around your job. That's why when they say work-life balance, no, it needs to be life-work balance. Forget the work-life balance, okay? Because work comes second to my life.
I feel like I saw a Reddit. I don't know. Was it Reddit? It had to be. I saw somebody talking about a Reddit thread that said something to the effect of, I have 2 employees that come in and they work their 8 hours and go home. Like, help me figure out why they're not committed to their job. Like, why are they not staying late? Why are they doing their 8 and going home? Like, they should be in here burning the midnight oil. They're not committed. Ciao. Anyway, so we're not doing that.
Yes.
We are prioritizing ourselves, because like you said, you really can't, man, it's the American way. These jobs will take a lot out of you. And it's important that we pour into ourselves, because I don't know why, like, they just, we're not robots.
We're not. And I constantly tell myself, T-Kea, you're not a robot. I have to, because I get very upset when I break routine. I'm a very regimented person, y'all. Like, And when I fall, I get upset. That's why I always give myself a B. I'm like a solid B. But needless to say, for self-care, we want to encourage y'all to think about what it is that you have been doing for self-care on a daily basis, y'all. Not just wait till you burn out and say, I need self-care. Catch it and try to implement small things in your life every single day as relates to self-care. And if you haven't been doing that, think about things that you can do. But then also applauding yourself when you are doing it, because, you know, Jordan, we're out here winning with our self-care. So
you got to celebrate the small things because that'll help you reach your goals. We talked about that.
Yes.
At the peer conference a couple weeks ago. All right. So for our moment of inspiration, we're going to leave you with some absolutely beautiful quotes, again, that are on Kizzle's Instagram page for Express Yourself Black Man. So, Black man, it's okay to not be okay. Black man, there is nothing you cannot do or attain in this world. Black man, you are a powerful force in this world. Black man, you are not alone. Black man, you are loved. So,
yes,
I want to leave y'all with a little feel good.
For our Black men.
Yeah.
Because we love our Black men over here. Our Black people die by suicide too. So, and lastly, before we close this thing out, y'all, we started realizing that we sometimes forget to share announcements. And we'll often post it on social media. And then, you know, that's how y'all find out. But we need to work on doing a better job at telling y'all on the podcast, too. Sometimes we don't share it because we don't exactly know when the episode is going to air, and then it might be dated. But we will say this. Jordan and I have some great announcements. Leon, you got to put the pium, 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 pium. So, because let me tell y'all, Jordan and we will be speaking in Panama City, Panama. What?
Who knew? Black people die by suicide too. Hits Panama. Listen.
Goes international, baby.
International. Okay. Central America. We're going to be in Panama City at the People of Color Conference.
We'll put it in the show notes.
We'll put it in
It's a long name, and we want to make sure we get it right. But we will be there in April. Yes, and I will also be speaking in St. Louis at Mental Health First Day, which is a part of the summit, a part of NatCon. And I will be speaking there doing a TED-style talk. They're called Ignite Talk. So I'll be speaking on the big stage.
Pew, 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 pew.
Yes, and I'm excited about that. And, and I'm excited about that. Michelle Obama is also she's speaking at NatCon. So I just told my mom, I'm just about to start walking around telling everybody, I'm in the speaker lineup with Michelle Obama. Don't talk to me. I'm just going to start telling everybody.
There you go.
Don't talk to me. So those are a few of our announcements. We have a lot more that we're working on, and we cannot wait to share. Jordan and I are really cooking up some amazing things. So thank you all for listening to another episode of Black People Die by Suicide 2. Be sure to connect with us on Instagram and on TikTok. Thank you all for listening, and we will talk to y'all in the next episode.
Yes, and just one last quick tidbit. You can always check out our events. We link them in the show notes and the description box of things that are coming up. But in case you didn't know that was there, now you know. Bye, y'all.